Welcome to Sustainable Stock, Reviving Legacy Genetics, the podcast that delves into the power of traditional cattle genetics and the ranchers bringing them back. We're returning to the tried and true practices that prioritize what truly works on the ranch. Each episode, we'll talk to ranchers who are rediscovering the methods that built strong, resilient, efficient, and fertile herds in the 1960s and 70s. These breeders are blending the best of the past with practical solutions for today's ranching world. Whether you're passionate about the future of ranching or curious about heritage genetics, this podcast is for you. Presented by Boss Sires. Tune in as we reconnect with the roots of the herd. Here's your host, Patrick Powers.
Welcome back to Sustainable Stock. Today, I'm very excited to be speaking with Austin Dillon, owner and operator of Counterculture Farms in East Texas. Austin has built a regenerative operation that has incorporated Mashona cattle, a rare horned line of Hereford cattle, and he also uses sheep in a sustainable and balanced system. In this episode, we're going to explore his journey and his practices and his vision for the future of ranching. Austin, I'm very happy to have you here today.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Yeah, I don't know if you'd like to let everybody know, and me too, this is only my second time speaking with you. Could you maybe give us some highlights of your operation and how you found yourself where you're currently at?
Yeah, so, mainly what we focus on is low input livestock. We've done anything from sheep to goats to cattle. Our main focus is the cows and the sheep. Basically, we're just focusing on something that's going to make it on its own, stay fat on grass, a little bit of hay supplement if we need, and really just treat them pretty hard out there and see who does the job so that the cows are working for us and not the other way around. We do rotate around. We do some high density grazing, some ultra high density grazing, and are just kind of playing around with that, seeing how our grasses respond the best to what type of management.
So you're not
started.
I'm sorry. So you're not just monitoring the cow's response to the grass. You're monitoring the grass's response to the cattle and the sheep as well.
That's correct. So it's funny to see, both of them side by side. Those cows take a big old, mouthful of grass at once, and the sheep, man, it's like they can pick any tiny little blade that they see in the field, whichever leaf they want to select, they can pick that leaf. And so most of our grasses are going to be, we're in a subtropical area. So we got Bahia and Bermuda mainly. We're going to have some other cool seasons in there too, but during the growing season, that's what they are. And the cows will really hammer down on that Bermuda, and you can mob it real heavy and then move them on. The sheep, they can do the same thing, but you got to push them a lot harder because they're really not looking to eat the grasses. They like the forbs and the broadleaf stuff, basically.
Okay, so
they
using help
them side by side.
They help clean
really
it up
well together.
Yeah, that's great.
That's correct.
Okay, well, I didn't mean to break in. That just piqued my interest there. You're very unique for me. I don't have anybody regionally to me that incorporates different livestock working hand in hand and is as focused as you are on, would it be considered holistic livestock management?
Yeah, you could call it holistic. I mean, you're looking, kind of seems like an overused word now, but basically, yes, looking at the whole system and trying to make everything work with nature rather than against.
I have a bad habit of picking the buzzword of the day.
Yeah.
All right. So getting back before I interrupted you on how you started. I know that speaking to you in the past, that y'all actually started out with more mainstream bloodlines of cattle. Did you have sheep in your operation at that time as well?
We did not. The reason, so mainly Grandpa had a bunch of old commercial cattle. Typically, Brangus would be the most. I mean, we did cross some stuff in, whatever was hot at the time at the sale barn, really, Brayford or Charolais, just mixing in different stuff. We found out really quickly that they do not make it on a low input management. And we started, playing around with all this stuff about 10 years ago. The interesting thing is when we got into it, my grandpa's from that generation where, they're growing up around the Great Depression or just after, and they got a different mindset than us nowadays. A lot like my age, I mean, most of us grew up pretty easy.
Absolutely.
Looking at compared to their time, we just don't have the same mindset. My grandpa was very profit driven. He was all about money, but at the same time, he did care about his cattle. It was just a strange thing for me to look back and see, bald spots in the fields and the grass always graze short. Typically, like most people are going to run their ranch to the max. They're not going to pull off whenever we get in a drought. They're not going to stockpile and move animals around like they would in nature. And that's the same thing we did. Is we set stock grazed, had 12 to 1,500 pound cows, just really big, tall, leggy cows, the ones they like at the sale barn that you can pack a lot of weight on in the feedlot. Well, we found out quickly that if you just put them on grass and hay and nothing else, most of those are going to fall apart. They're not going to breed on you. They're going to raise a crappy calf. They're going to be skinny, looking like they're going to die in the winter. And we quickly found out in rotating cattle that we needed to change our genetics. So we started breeding in some Red Angus bulls, just trying to bring the leg down on those animals. Created some nice composites there, but quickly found out that it was a slow move. And so we just started transitioning out and, sell 10, 20 head a year and just trying to get into better genetics, use that money to go put towards a big group of heifers. And so we started breeding in Red Angus. And then most recently we got into the horned Herefords. Basically, the horned Herefords are kind of the prized possession at the moment. A few years ago, there's an older couple that had about 3 different herds of they had Red Pole, horned Hereford, and Red Devon.
They were based out of
really
Cameron,
nice.
Right?
They were based out of Cameron, yes, sir.
Okay.
They had really, really nice grass cattle. I mean, all of them were great. We'd been trying to buy horned Herefords from them for a while. They got a little bit older. We're just busy with their business and all that, and decided to sell, and just kind of right place, right time, like God looking out. Sadly, we were in the middle of a massive drought, so we had a couple places stockpiled, and we went and put them on that stockpile and made it with them. But that's where the horned Herefords come from. They bought them about 20 years ago, brought them from Coahuila, Mexico. That's the old Bill Finan Ranch. I believe his grandson runs it now. Really, really nice cattle that basically clothesline since the 60s, but they've been raising them for, 100 years on real harsh conditions. And so we're taking those and we are working on more composites now with the horned Hereford, Mashona, and the Red Angus.
Okay, when you talk about stockpiling, can you define that for me? I'm very ignorant to all this.
So stockpiling, just letting the grass get away from you, basically letting it get real tall, resting a certain pasture or a certain parcel of land for a long period of time. And there are different, definitions on that, but that's a real basic one. You just completely
redefined that terminology for me. My idea of stockpiling is having an extra 60 brown bales put away.
There you go. Yeah, that is one way to do it. But if you're stockpiling standing grass, we'll put it that way.
No, that's great. I mean, that keeps your operation true and keeps a balance going. I like that. Okay, so you've touched on your Hereford operation and how those genetics made their way up from Mexico to Cameron and then into your possession. And you're a little bit of the pride of your operation right now. But I also know that you were messing around with Mashona cattle. How did those find their way into your operation?
So we've been looking at them for a while. There's not a lot out there. And so it's hard to be able to buy the best, a really good bull and not just buy somebody that's, there's lots of people out there that are breeding animals that really should be cutting the nuts off them. They should be castrating the bulls, turning them into steers, right?
Yeah.
And they're getting sold as bulls. That's across any breed, right? And so with lower numbers in Mashona, it felt like it was really hard, to find the right bull. And we're also a red hided operation. We've had black hides, nothing against it. It's just that I didn't want to move. I already have 90% red. And so I just thought, if I'm going to put a red Mashona on them, I want a red one. Well, from what I hear, it's like 70% black and 30% red in the Mashona. I don't know the exact numbers, but a lot lower percentage.
Just how uncommon are Mashona in the United States? Was it a difficult find for you, or was it readily available in your region?
Not in my region, no. There's a very big herd in Florida. That's like the biggest one in the U.S., I believe. And there's some other ranches that have been utilizing the genetics for a while, and so they've been
Well, that fits your operation.
Breeds.
Your tropical grass, your dry
That's right.
tropical climate. No, that sounds like a natural move for your operation.
That's right. So we bought one of their top Red Bulls, and basically it was a 6-year-old, so they'd been using him for a while, and right place, right time, got some good genetics. And so we've been breeding that on for about a year and a half now, and starting to see some calves coming out, and have seen quite a bit of the composites. But basically what we were looking for with the Mashona was we were looking with extreme heat tolerance without adding on the leg, like a lot of the Brahmas that you're going to go add. They just add way too much bone and too much growth. We're wanting to keep a short, fat cow. And so most of these Mashonas are going to be really, really moderate, small to moderate framed.
Okay, and why were you looking for that structure for your operation? Is that a personal preference, or do you feel that matches your environment better?
That matches the environment. Well, the cows have gotten too big, right? I mean, we're taking stuff to the sale barn. We're trying to max out pounds, and we're going broke doing it as an industry. I mean, there are people making money, don't get me wrong. But basically, whenever we take that cow and we turn it into a pig or something else, right? We need it to fatten up, but we have to feed it grains or something else that basically enhances its natural ability to fatten on grass. Well, we take a slab-sided cow, right? Long ribs that are straight up and down instead of looking like you shoved a beach ball inside their ribs. Really bouncy, wide ribs is what we're looking for, and we just weren't getting that in the Brangus. And so basically we already had that set. We've got roughly 1,000-pound cows. The biggest ones are going to be 1,100 or 1,200 pounds, all pretty small frame, or let's call them moderate framed.
Yeah.
And we didn't want to go the other direction. Since we started with the Brangus, with those big, tall cows, we knew what they were going to do on our low-quality forages here in East Texas.
We unknowingly did the same thing with our mini herd. We just tried to match our small footprint and our limited vegetation, and needed to keep our costs down. And
right.
That's what led us down the road we're on. Well, we've covered quite a bit, but my next question is, how do you arise to all this information? I mean, you're a young guy just like me, and how did you find all this? Was this all, did you have mentors? Was this just a Google search?
Well, none of us came into this world alone, right? So
That's
we've
right.
all had help. That's a big one. There's been a lot of people to pour in a lot of time and effort, and like my friends that sold me the Herefords, I didn't start it. I wasn't here 60 years ago, and to be able to get my hands on genetics like that is, to me, it's a providential thing. But it's also, good people looking to pass the torch, and that's kind of the boat we're in right now with this whole ag. Basically, the whole world of ag in the U.S. We've got these 60-year-olds that are owning most of the land and the farming operations, and now they're getting to the point of retirement, and you got a bunch of people my age that are maybe less interested in working hard.
Yeah, it's like Grant says, it's hard to hand off a unprofitable business model to the next generation. So this new line of thinking might pique the interest of young people into taking back over the family ranch that Pawpaw has been struggling with forever.
That's right. And that was a beautiful thing in my situation of getting started was, being able to, so my grandpa, got older, typical story, got older, couldn't take care of his cows. And so I started, putting out hay and taking care of stuff more and more, fences, all that, and doing that kind of part-time. And then my dad, he was really, outstanding to be able to step aside and be like, run with it. Most people in their farming operations, they have son, dad, grandfather, great grandfather, everyone's got an input, all the uncles and cousins, everyone's sitting there saying what we should do.
Yeah.
I really had a beautiful, yes, we had plenty of arguments. I didn't want to spray anything whatsoever. Like, I was just like, let's not spray herbicides. I don't want to do it. And he kept going back to this old man that was like, well, he just puts a spot sprayer on his four-wheeler, and that's how we're going to keep it down. I said, either we're going to figure out how to keep the weeds down without spraying, or we're going to go your route, and we're just going to keep treating this conventionally, right?
Yeah, is that where your sheep came in?
The sheep came in a few years later after that. I wish they came in at that point. But the big deal with it is if you give the land what it wants, the weeds go away. The weeds are telling us what we're doing wrong with management. And a big one around here is purple top thistle. And that sucker only grows in really heavily compacted, non-aerated soils.
I'm battling that right now.
If you let it do its job, it sends a deep taproot like a big carrot down into the soil and breaks up the soil for you. So it will do its job, but we've got to give the land enough rest and the right environment, the right tools, and help it do what it's trying to do. It is trying to heal, and normally the rancher or whatever land management, the landowner, is somebody standing in the way of letting the land heal.
I am standing in the way.
I am too, unknowingly. And that was a little bit of a ramble, but at the first part of that question you asked, well, how did we learn? Most of it was running into a wall and figuring out we had to go around it and not through it. And so once you figure out the issues you're dealing with, you tackle one at a time, do lots of research. Yes, we've been to conferences and learned online, and YouTube has been super helpful, and other people that have done stuff before us have helped too. But everything you take back to your small microbiome, your little ranch, no matter how big it is going to be different than your neighbors. And so you got to figure out what works for you.
Okay. Well, and that's a perfect transition. My beautiful wife and everybody else here in the Boss Hires team make some notes for me before every one of these interviews. And I have a note here about your use of high density grazing. I was wondering if you could go over that, just how tight do you pack them in and how often do you rotate, about what size paddock do you give a large group, or, anything on that.
Okay. So basically there's a simple definition would be selective grazing and non-selective grazing. You can take 90% plus of the forage that's in front of you and then leave it for a long rest period. That would be non-selective, or you can rotate through and basically take a less, maybe 50% of what's there being selective. So with our rotating, when we first started, we were accidentally doing ultra high density grazing, which is taking the majority of what's out there, grazing it off, letting it rest before it comes back, letting the plants rest before you bring the cattle back. And so our Brangus did not do well on it at all. I mean, they were falling apart. And so basically through the years, we've gotten a little bit better at things. Now that the genetics are better, we can push them a little bit harder. We are doing mostly daily rotations. In the past few years, we have done a higher density grazing, which they're calling ultra high. And you're basically moving them 3 or 4 times a day. And that would be, let's call it
a full-time job is what I'd call it.
For sure. But maybe 100 cows on 3/4 of an acre, would be a ultra high density for us.
Wow.
And then typically we got so much rain last year that it was very hard to do it without mucking up the pastures. So you might do it for 2 or 3 weeks or a month. Then we get some crazy rain. So we back off, 400,000 to 500,000 pounds an acre to, let's say, 100,000 pounds an acre, so that we're not tearing up the root mass in the soil because the cows are stepping in 6 inches deep, from a 3-inch rain.
Okay.
And if you keep them moving, it's not going to destroy it, but it's something we're playing with and trying to do more of. And the reason being is, we'll throw the sheep in here for a mix. Put the sheep on a really clean Bermuda hayfield. I mean, pristine Bermuda. You put them in, let's say a couple hundred sheep on an acre. If you watch those sheep, they will go in there and they're going to bite the leaves off of the stem of the Bermuda. They don't eat it like a cow. Cow takes those big mouthfuls and basically whoops that Bermuda quick. these sheep will pick the leaves off, the most nutritious part. And if you move them, if you don't have them in tight enough, they won't eat that Bermuda down to where it has regrowth at the crown. And that's what we're wanting, because if we eat the stems and the leaves down to the crown and we give it ample time of recovery, whether that's 1 month or 6 months, whatever it takes, when that crown does start to grow back, it is going to be mostly leaf that's coming out of the crown. And doing that over and over, you're increasing the leaf matter and the forage availability and the forage quality level. Well, on the first example, I just said sheep go in, they eat the leaves off, and now it looks like there was maybe a few animals in there. You could tell they walked around, but they didn't eat it near enough. When we come back to that 60 days later, that forage is actually in worse quality than it was on the first graze.
Really?
And the reason being is they ate, it's not how the Bermuda works. So they stripped the leaves off of it and the stem was left. So instead of regrowing from the crown with new leaves, it's trying to use all of its energy to shoot leaves on those stems, right? And so if we would have taken the stem all the way down and letting it regrow from the crown, we would have had a leafier plant. And that's really like the whole premise behind the higher density grazing, is trying to increase the productivity of your land, but also the forage quality.
Okay. So speaking to you the other day, you said that there's not really one size fit all approaches, and that you just spoke on really shows that you fit this regenerative ag to work with nature and work with your independent operation. Do you feel like these practices could roll out to others easily?
It depends on how much you want to do, honestly. I think that the biggest hurdle for all of this is just mindset. Like whatever we're facing in our life, definitely on the ranches with regenerative ag, regenerative ag is a big buzzword now, and there's massive corporations taking in products for regenerative ag labels. And so at some point, if not already, it's going to be commoditized. Mm-hmm. We will, I guess we'll see. I do have hope. There's a lot of people doing it. There's people who've been doing it since before I was born. There's a lot of people. There is a big movement. That the hard part for me is it seems like we tend to demonize the people who are spraying and not taking care of their land in maybe a more holistic manner and less poison. I love the whole no poison thing of our ranch, but at the same time, I don't think that my neighbor who is spraying because he wants to destroy his land. And that's taken a little bit of growing up for me to take a step back and look at my neighbors and say, like, every decision that they're making for the most part is trying to make their land better. They're trying to not let the weeds take over. They don't want to run sheep to eat the weeds, so they're going to spray them. They don't want to run their cows in higher densities, so they're going to spray them. They don't want to run a mower 3 times a year, so they're going to spray the weeds. There are reasons for all of that.
So you're thinking it might be an education and time gap there that's leading people to use these different methods?
I think, maybe time. I'm not sure exactly what finally kicks you in the gut and you go into overdrive, but I have conversations with plenty of people who are interested in what's going on, but not interested in doing it. And so I don't know exactly where that mindset changes. Like for us, whenever we first started, my big focus was I was dealing with some autoimmune disease stuff with my gut and just figuring out, like, why am I so sick? And I'm getting organic stuff from the store and it's not helping. Like, what's going on with our food system? And just doing deep dives, I've finally figured out, well, we've got some cows. We just need to raise them as clean as possible. And we moved down that whole long wormhole, I guess, that many people have gone through, and realizing that some of the cleanest stuff we're going to eat is going to be raised on our own, small farms and ranches across the U.S. from our neighbors, right?
Yeah. I spoke to you the other day, and you touched on how you actually went down the route of producing your own beef for retail, and how you've slowly moved away from that and gotten more into seed stock. I was wondering if you could talk me through that.
Correct. It is a very similar thing to what we were just talking about, is that it takes a mindset shift or a massive change for you to basically decide that you want to pay more money for a higher quality beef. And that's kind of where we're at now. Is I thought that this was like, the next big thing. Everyone's going to get healthy, and a lot of people have, right? A lot of people have ditched the stuff at the stores and gone for higher quality proteins. But the main people that I feed, I thought I was going to feed the whole town, right? I don't have enough cows for that anyways, so it's kind of stupid. But I thought, man, this is going to fly off the shelves. It's going to be crazy. Everyone's going to want this. And it's only marked up a little bit from the store, right? Because, of course, as a small producer, our costs are higher than whatever is going to the grocery store. So anyways, I sit there and I think, man, this is going to happen. Just like my neighbors. Oh, they see that my cows are fat. They see my grass is lush and looks way better than theirs at the same time of year. I just have different management. And so they're going to catch on, and you really got to want to, the guy who's pouring the herbicides in his sprayer and he's getting it all over his arms and stuff, he probably doesn't give a crap, right? I mean, he's getting the poison on him. He's not real concerned about it. But with the beef side, you've got these people who have been sick, right? They've had the issues, they've done the research, and now they're trying to find a really clean, healthy protein, and they're not really sure where to get it. They find somebody, they've got to go out of their way to go search for it and find it. And those are the people we focus on now. Instead of trying to feed everyone who's going to the grocery store, we cut back 90% on trying to have a steak in hand all the time. And now we're focused more on bulk to the families that want to stock their freezer for 6 months or a year, and really focus our target audience instead of blindly thinking, I guess, we're going to feed the world like we've all been naively taught, because that's
no, I like that. You're feeding the people that have woken up a little bit and are looking for an option. And you're right, want to buy bulk. You're selling to the people that would normally be hunting for quarters on Facebook or Craigslist.
Correct.
And you're giving them the best option.
That's right.
I like that. Okay. So what led you into the seed stock side? Was it the push away from that and needing to find a use for your cows, or was there a demand?
Well, we were trying to grow everything, and so it made sense to, sell the males and, fatten them up and process them. And then you could keep most of your breed stock. And we found out quickly that there was look at Boss Sires.
Absolutely.
There is a large need for people to basically move in a direction quicker than what most of us are seeing. So like with the Brangus, it took us a long time, and we still ended up getting out of it completely and moving to some better moderate frames. Well, it's very similar with the seed stock of people out there are hurting really bad, right? Like whether you're a homesteader and you got 10 cows or you've got 10,000, there are people that could be doing a lot better with better genetics. And so with what we've been able to breed in ourselves and the Herefords we were able to obtain, we've really started focusing on helping those who are basically they have the mindset change, right?
Yeah.
People that want to do something with their herd. I also like selling cows a lot more than I like selling a pound of ground beef. So there's probably something to be said there.
No, I really like your attitude on that. I mean, I've remarked on that in the past with my wife and others that, I have 10 acres. I want to make the biggest impact I can with the small property I have. So if I were to have fallen down the standard rabbit hole right now, I would be with show genetics looking for profitability. But I was lucky enough to encounter people like you and others that had this different approach to agriculture. And I've found a system that works for my small property, is profitable for me, has low inputs. And I feel like Boss Sires and others are going to benefit from having a relationship with people like you that woke up and are providing that, and an education to go along with it. Did you go to college for this? Is there a college for all of this?
So School of Hard Knocks, right? But that I feel like that's where the best lessons come from for most of us is, putting the rubber to the mat, rubber to the road. But we did. So gosh, in the very In the very beginning, I guess I was in school and I was studying horticulture, and I had kind of a different path I thought that I was taking with that. But basically studying plants at a really close up level. So horticulture, biology, which at the local university, that's going to include animal sciences and some other things. I jokingly, but not, tell people often that college taught me what not to do. And that's just honestly because, who's paying for the research grants? Who's paying for the big money that is big university, right? There's a lot of big ag money funneling into that. It's just the way it works. It's fine. But they are teaching the books, right? They're teaching what they've been told to teach. Well, my mind doesn't work like that. So anything I hear, I'm questioning everything, right? I'm the older student in the back. I went back probably mid-20s. I went back to school. I didn't last very long when I got out of high school. I didn't have my head straight. And so a few years later, I went back and really just hammered it out. Well, I'm the guy sitting there with my hand up on everything. Well, you say this, but this is actually how it works on our place. And we've got cows and we're doing this. And you're telling me the complete opposite. We've got higher breed up rates with different management, with lower inputs and things that are just not clicking and making sense. Well, why do I have to spray? What's the alternative? There's not an answer for that. And so what college really helped me with the most, I would say, is really the critical thinking and asking a lot of questions and then having the wherewithal to go find the answers on your own, whether that was through a research paper or project. I got to put a lot of it into practice with our own farm since the university's here local to us. And then after that, really just running with it all, trying a whole bunch of different things. We tried to plant a fescue here a couple years ago. It does not grow this far south, but there are a few pockets of it down here in East Texas that have it in their bottomlands.
What is that?
And it will. So the bottomlands are just like
no,
bottoms, like
fescue.
floodlands. The fescue is a great winter feed. There's actually a fescue belt up north. I guess you'd call it Middle America. I'm not sure exactly where it starts and ends, but let's say Missouri is a good example of a big fescue state.
Okay.
Well, their forage, it's got toxic endophytes in it. It can be bad for your cows, right? It is a problem, but managed correctly, it's a huge blessing. So our forages go, if you stockpile, like we talked earlier, let the grass grow really tall, then when the freeze comes in, it all goes dormant. Bermuda and Bahia basically start falling apart as soon as they get cold, wet, right? If it stays dry, they'll hold their nutrients to an extent. But the fescue, it actually holds a high percent protein. It holds itself together really well for winter grazing. So you can stockpile fescue, and there's guys not feeding a lick of hay running across this, just doing mob grazing across it. And so I thought, man, if we could add that in down here, well, it was a massive fail. I grew one of the best crops I ever seen in the South of fescue. And the next summer there wasn't one plant left. Maybe there was 10, but we planted several acres, way too big of a trial plot. And so we failed miserably. There is still some fescue. If you walk 100 steps, you might find one plant here and there sparse throughout the field. But the next year, the drought just whooped it, and it just was too hot. And so we've done a lot of things like that, and it has been a complete failure or a complete success. And typically we learn really well from the failures. I do more than I do the successes.
You're not the first person to use the term mob grazing. Could you tell me what that is? Is there a number, or is it?
No, that's the hard part with it, is everyone's using these similar terminologies, and one guy that's mob grazing, it may be 10 cows to an acre, and another guy, it may be 200 cows to the acre. But basically you're putting cows or your livestock in a large group, kind of as big as you can get it, right?
Mm-hmm.
For your area, basically putting them in a mob and then moving them along to mimic what happened in nature with the bison, where the wolves kept them together, kept them moving. They hit an area really hard, and then they moved on, came back to it at some point in the future, whether that was a year or years later. they mobbed it and then let it recover.
I like that you brought that up, bringing it back to nature. I'm, just taking a quick snapshot on who you were, found my way to your YouTube channel and your about portion of that. Do you recall what you're saying is on your YouTube channel?
Heal the land, heal the people, or no grain, no poison, no BS.
No, I believe it was the first one, but it was about your effort to work along with nature. And I was wondering if you could maybe go a little further with that and tell me how your operation shows respect and pays homage to nature.
So heal the land, heal the people was like when we'd been taking care of the cows and gotten to the point where we had some beef ready, and we kind of rebranded, opened up as Counterculture Farms. And I was like really, really big still am on healing the land. But if we heal the land, we're going to heal the people, right? We're going to heal the communities. If you heal the land and you work with the animals, things start changing, like within yourself and the land. You start seeing the land come back to life. You feel like you're coming back to life. You then take a bite out of nature. You take a part of it and put it in you. You start realizing that like we're not removed from the system. Like we are part of the system. We are literally taken up out of the earth and formed, right? And we're all going back into the soil. So it's weird that we live this little blip from coming out of the earth to going back into the earth.
No, absolutely. That makes a lot of sense to me. Getting back to your cattle, you're kind of unique in that as far as people I've spoke to so far with cattle. You're right. Just like your previous operation when you still had your Bringus and all that, the market around here is mainly what's popular at the auction block. But you are building cross cattle, right? And is there a demand for that in your area, or do you feel did it fit your operation best? Could you explain the reason why you're pushed that way?
So there is a growing demand for composite cattle for sure. I think what we're trying to do is I think that we're trying to figure out how to fix the broken problems of the past is why the composite thing's kind of coming in more. I mean, it's been around for a long time, right? Solomon says nothing new under the sun. So there's not a lot of like new things any of us are doing other than maybe trying to right old wrongs. So with the composite cattle, what we're trying to do is we're putting these Mashona on due to mainly the heat adaptation, the nutritional adaptability, which is just them being able to do better on a low quality forage. And like we talked earlier, there's plenty of cows that will not do well at all on low quality forage. And so if we have really whatever breeds you want to pick, we're trying to figure out how to maximize what we're doing. And so the hard part here is if you go to the sale barn and you take these half Mashona, half Red Angus, you're going to get docked, right? Like you're bringing a smaller framed animal and maybe you can get by at the right time of year, sell the right thing. But any smaller framed animal that you bring to the sale barn, they're wanting large frame, big bone, right? Pack a lot of meat onto that carcass. So it doesn't make a lot of sense if we're going to sell to the sale barn. That's why I don't tell people what they should do. If your main thing is selling at the sale barn, great. I wouldn't go over 50% Mashona. I mean, we're playing with that right now. And I've seen a lot of the 100% Mashonas, the full bloods, same with Corriente or these smaller breeds. They're not going to bring that extra money, but at the sale barn. But what they do bring is they bring the extra value by being a lower input animal on your ranch. And so if we can figure out how to merge and basically put the puzzle pieces together to get the best out of both worlds. And what that may mean is sell less at the sale barn and sell more breeding stock to people who actually want productive animals. Because at some point, what if you cannot get the feed truck to come to your place and you just need them to make it on the grass at your house? Well, don't we all want cows that just make it fat on the grass at our house?
You would think that's a given, wouldn't you?
You would think.
Well, it's funny. It's funny that you brought up Corriente. I was speaking with another breeder the other day, and he notated the Corriente's natural fertility that's found because it's smaller frame and all that. If they felt that no one had tried to adapt it for a meat market type cow and bring it into that larger frame operation, no one tried to bred it up and inadvertently had left alone the fertility aspect because it hadn't been messed with as much. Do you feel that might be true in your smaller frame cattle, that because we're not pushing these market metrics that we've left some aspects alone that are benefiting us now?
I would definitely say the smaller framed animals are the more fertile ones out there. I mean, the bigger framed animals that have a hard time keeping condition on, a skinny cow is going to have a harder time breeding than a fat cow. So typically your fattest animals are going to be your smaller framed animals, not the 1,500 pound cow in the field.
Okay.
The fertility is pretty interesting to me. There's, so many cool guys talking about it right now. So I won't go deep off into it, but there's been a lot of talk similarly with the Mashona too, of saying how fertile these animals are. It's worth doing some research on for sure. What we're doing right now is kind of real world research and seeing how all that plays out. Most of our cows are going to all of them are going through a strict breeding, and they're going to be, cold for anything that doesn't come up bred or doesn't take care of a calf, doesn't wean a good calf.
Yeah, you're building sustainable models.
Right.
So do you feel that maybe some more education in the marketplace is missing, and then your buyers will reward these traits greater with a greater understanding of what could be profitable and what sustainability within their operation could look like?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, especially whenever you talk to people who are actually honest about what their herd, if they've got 100 cows and they're getting a 60% breed up and you're getting 90+%, that's a big talking point right there. What if you could get 30% more of your cows bred?
Yeah, but you're always going to have that guy. Well, what's their weaning weight?
That's exactly right. But I would say that I would rather have a smaller calf every year than one big calf every 3 years.
Exactly. And if you've got 100 cows out there that aren't birthing around the same rate, their birth rates are further and further out, who cares that one calf that cow gave you in 2 years was 50 pounds heavier? If I've got this group of 100 over here that's kicking out 100 babies every year, they can all be 20 pounds lighter.
That's exactly right.
And that helps people that aren't just going for sustainability. That's profitability there, brother.
That's right.
Austin, along those same lines of the calving weight argument, what do you feel the accessibility of regenerative ag is? Do you think it's readily available in our country? Are there systems in place to make it where the average person, without getting let in on the secret, can find their way to this operation style?
Well, anyone who is observing and has eyeballs and ears to hear, right?
Yeah.
Anybody can go down that route, because if you're actually paying attention, I don't care what your management is, honestly. If you're actually paying attention to your land and you're in tune with nature, you're really observing, right? And asking questions, whether your land is getting better or worse. I don't care if you're spraying or moving your animals or leaving them there all year. If you're paying attention, it is accessible for you. And I would argue it is a responsibility for you to make your land better and not worse. And we've somehow got to this point where the status quo is okay. I mean, I can't tell you how many people have told me, well, I'm not going to be around then. I'm going to be dead by then. Good Lord, have we forgotten what we're doing down here? Have we forgotten literally what life is about? I mean,
yeah. No.
It upsets me, honestly.
No, I love to hear you remark that way. You're right. Don't we want to leave something better for future generations?
Yeah. And if that's really our deal here, I mean, we're co-creators, right? We've been created and we've been given the power and the responsibility to not only rule and have authority over everything around us, right? To be the orchestrator. Like, we're not making the storms come, but we are able to manage within the storm, to manage our land, to manage our families, right? To take care and to steward. And somehow we've stepped out of that, and like we basically laid the responsibility down again. And without getting too preachy, it's the same thing that happened with Adam and Eve, right? Adam laid down his responsibility. Instead of saying, hey, you have full power, authority, dominion over the earth, make babies, multiply. We are supposed to be the hands and feet of God down here, right? God is in control of all of everything, but he's also given us major power, authority, and responsibility to either take care of and make this place better, or to neglect it and let it go to waste. And if we're not, so with the first thing in mind, is it accessible? Well, are you thinking? Are you looking? Are you feeling? If you're not, that's where you start. And you get off your tractor or whatever full-wheel drive you're driving out there, and you go and you walk and you sit in the grass and you look at your animals and you start asking questions and just observing what's going on. And if we all did more of that, man, I think that there could be like a massive resurgence, whatever we want to call it, of regenerative or anything. They did this back in Dust Bowl times where they were trying to go around and teach people better management. We've been through these cycles over and over, just like Solomon said, right? Nothing new under the sun. We are going through cycles over and over. And each one of us, as a man, as a woman, we get to pick. Do you make things better from here on out, or do you make things worse?
Well said. Well said. I like it. I think that is a perfect way for me to move into hope. I have a note here of hope associated with you and your operation. Every time I've encountered one of your videos on YouTube or seen your message on Facebook, I walk away with a sense of hope. Could you tell me what that's all about?
I'm just like anybody else, man. You look around, you poke your head up, and you just think, man, what a mess. I mean, the news, anything, and especially when we're looking directly focused at the cattle industry and how many, truly atrocities are going on that we've been breeding in, making people go broke for generations. And, the inputs are killing us. So why are we breeding in genetics that are creating animals that need the high input? So I have lots of hope just from seeing what has happened in my short life and seeing how quickly things can turn around and how quickly they can move in the right direction. And I think the really cool part is that we all get to decide. There's not just one big place that is forging our future. Each one of us individually is helping form our collective future. And so a lot of us getting on board with this it's really cool to see. It's cool to see the progress. We could list name after name and ranch after ranch of people doing really, really impressive things, way cooler than me.
And he's humble.
That looking around, man, there's a lot of hope to be had, but it's still, at the end of the day, I think the mindset is the biggest deal. And it comes back to like you taking a good long look in the mirror and going, well, what am I going to do about it? And that made me stumble for a long time. I was so pissed off about all the problems and all these different things. And I've been in that cycle through my whole life. And I feel like I broke through something pretty big when we started all this and started in this journey of actually taking a step in the right direction of going, I haven't fixed all the problems. I haven't even come close to having answers or solutions for like 99.9% of the stuff that irks me or that is going on. But when you take that one step in action, it's like, well, I'm no longer sitting on the bench now, am I? Right? So it's this whole new attitude and this whole new feeling of you get knocked down over and over and over. But that's the cool thing about farmers and ranchers, man. People get back up. They know how to get knocked down and get back up. And so I have a lot of hope for the future for sure.
Yeah. Well, do you have any success stories of different ranch operations that maybe you've seen make the switch? Do you have something personal and dear to you that can instill hope in others?
Yeah. So pretty cool story recently. So I told you how we kind of started. Well, this guy that's about twice my age, his father just passed. He's, an hour from me, pretty close neighbor. And this guy is kind of going through like what I went through 10 years ago and starting to transition those Brangus out. He's got a herd of roughly 100 head of Brangus, some mixed in and stuff, but just commercial, big, tall, gangly black cattle. And to be able to tell him right now of like, here's what I would do. Here's the 5 things we tried on breeding. Here's the best thing that worked with the quickest turnaround to get a grass genetic animal. And so his dad passed, and with that, it's kind of a passing of a torch, and you start to get to buy different bulls and do different things and not have the argument. Yeah. And so he came over, and we've been talking about, he's been planting cover crops, been doing all the stuff, learning on his own, and we'll talk every now and again. Well, he took and bought these horned Hereford bulls and went over there and put them on, and it's super exciting to me to see, man, he's like, he's going to lap me soon. In what I was doing with that Brangus genetics, I put on Red Angus and some other stuff that made it better, but it wasn't the right switch that did it in like one generation. And I think that these horned Hereford bulls are going to just completely turn around his operation in a matter of years. And so to be able to help somebody along and go, hey man, don't waste the next 5 years trying this and this, or the next 10 years, just go ahead and put this on it, and we'll see what happens. But it should be magical.
Man, I love that. To dumb down what you said, I'm not all the answers, but I'm your head start to the solution.
That's exactly right.
No, I like it.
To be able to help people with that's the hope. Like, dude, it's hard. Life is hard for everybody, but you start getting down here with land cost and labor and just all the weather and stuff with farming. It's depressing sometimes, for sure. It seems like the whole world can be against you, but you get these little glimpses of hope where you help somebody else and they don't have to go through the hellhole that you went through. I think that's what it's all about.
Amen, brother. Some of our closing thoughts. In your view, what do you think the moral obligation of a cattleman to the land, the industry, and the future generations? What do you think that is?
I like to look back a lot and see what's happened in history, and even going back to Bible times and looking, and it seems like we have moved to this point in our culture where we don't focus so much about the next generations. We're so busy and so focused on making it through the day and making it through the year. And there are people who have 100-year plans and 500-year plans and really go through that. But I'd say it seems like a lot of people are focused on getting through the day. So what I think the responsibility is going to be, yes, taking care of the land, the animals, your family, and creating a good foundation there. But I really think we should be focused on 100 years from now, and what decisions that we're making now are going to affect several generations later. Like, I would like this to be an abundant paradise, right? Whenever I'm old and I'm hitting it, I want to see generations following after me that are doing way better. They're standing on my shoulders. A good friend of mine always says is that a good dad doesn't want their son to start on the floor with them. He wants them to start on the ceiling. That son needs to stand on the father's shoulders instead of right where he started, right? That's what we're doing generation after generation, if you're a good father, right?
No, absolutely.
And so in taking that into everything that we're doing, which I struggle with the work-life balance, I get so into and so passionate about what I'm doing that, yesterday, Valentine's Day, I need to remember, go take your wife out, go take some special time with her, because it ain't all just about cows.
Yeah. Well, Austin, you're obviously a man of faith, and I would like to ask you, if you don't mind answering, how do you feel faith has influenced your operation?
It is one of the biggest eye-openers for me. I was raised in the church, so I have that lens to look through, and sometimes that's hindering more than helping. But it's something super special to be able to go back to the original call, which is the original blessing, right? Be fruitful and multiply, have dominion over the earth, right? And to see the long line of generations that has moved away from that, and even more recently where we are just completely raping and pillaging the earth, to be a part of the solution, albeit a small little blip in the sand, right? To be someone who has decided, all right, no matter how small it be, no matter if it gets completely reversed after I die and someone else takes over the property, whatever, I don't have control over that, but I have the control to speak right now that I am going to do whatever I can to make things better and to bring more heaven to earth. And I really believe that was the whole deal. Like, we're talking about faith here, and in the Garden of Eden, that's what we get to look back to. We get to look at this like very special place where God walked in the cool of the day with his son and daughter. Man, that's crazy. He's walking with them in this garden, like this very special place. Man communes with God. So he pulls them up out of the soil. He breathes his spirit into them. We've got literally the creator spirit in us, and we have this soil of our Mother Earth holding that together and informing us. And then somehow in these thousands of years past, we've got to this point where we don't give two shits about God or the land. And it's like, it is the most mind-blowing thing to me. And the easiest answer is honestly reconnection. And so it's mind-blowing, honestly, that the reconnection is the simple answer. You go out, you walk barefoot in your field, you sit there with your animals, drink a cup of coffee, and watch your cows eat. That'll hit your soul right there.
Well, Austin, I was going to ask you next what your biggest takeaway you wanted listeners to have, and I think I just found it. Reconnect.
I agree. I will finish on that. On the reconnect, basically, it is as simple as what we said earlier of go out, observe, ask questions. And what I like to do is go out and sit on the earth without shoes on, and to sit there and to ask God what he wants out of the land, what the land wants, what he wants me to do, because I get so busy, and I'm not saying I do this every day or every month or anything, but every now and again it hits me, and we need to be able to like tune into the spirit when that happens, and to sit down and listen and to ask him, because we get so damn busy and we forget to reconnect. And at the end of the day, the whole thing is relational. And if we get the relationship right, just like with our Father here on earth, if we get the relationship right, we can weather all storms. But if we have the relationship wrong, it feels like every little tiny thing that happens is sinking the ship, and it's not.
I think more people could really benefit and do a lot of self-healing and complete a lot of self-search if they would just do that. My wife, if I can't find her, I go look out in the pasture. She's sitting on a turned over protein tub and sitting with her cows, watching the birds, and taking a minute to enjoy what you've built.
That's exactly right.
Well, brother, last closing thought. Any hopes for the industry over the next 5 to 10 years? Is there something you'd like to see spark off and happen with the quickness?
Yeah, big hope. I think that these lines where these older cattlemen have been holding on for years, like the Herefords dating back, and there's so many ranchers. Like Boss Sires is cool because they're putting it all together, so we can just read the list off of there. But there's so many older ranchers who have been doing this and have held things together. And I think now with social media and the internet and people who really, really care, that this is about to explode and get out there, and just the availability of it for people to reach out and be able to buy 100 straws, 1,000 straws, and change a herd. Their genetics may not be anywhere near them, but the fact that they can make that significant of a change in one breeding season, I'm super excited to see what happens here, because there's some big players out there that can make some huge ripples.
Absolutely. Well, Austin, I'm going to have it in the podcast description, but could you let the listeners know where they could find your work or anything?
Yep. So YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, we post a fair amount. That's at Counterculture Farms. And then we are in the middle of redoing our website. We just closed it about a month ago, so give us maybe a few weeks or a month to get it back up. But that'll be counterculture.farm. And you can also, reach out, email counterculturefarms@gmail.com. But social media is pretty easy to get a hold of us. So.
All right. Well, Bubba, I really appreciate you taking the time to share your story with us today. And it's been really good to learn a lot about your mission and your vision. For everyone listening, if you want to show some support, Sustainable Stock has created a Patreon. There's not a whole lot of content. It's more of a, we like what you're doing, here's us helping out situation right now. We are now on YouTube. That's a very recent development for us, so please go give us a like and follow. You can catch all the previous episodes, and this one will be on there as well. Thank you for listening, and don't forget to ranch with purpose and breed for the future. We'll see you next time. Thank you.
Thank you for tuning in to Sustainable Stock, Reviving Legacy Genetics. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe and share. Join us next time as we continue exploring the legacy and future of cattle ranching. For more information, visit us at bosssires.com. That's BOSSIRES.com. Or connect with us on Facebook. Until then, stay rooted in common sense and connected to the herd.